so Lyra, we did a Malaysia Day recording last week, right?
Yes.
And I think just one day after that, there was a viral video of Sarawak's premier, Abang. Did you see that video?
Yes, I did.
And I think he was giving a speech right after Malaysia Day. And there was a cabinet meeting in Kuching also. So I think let's have a listen at the clip and then we want to discuss.
Last night, it was the Prime Minister, Anwar Ibrahim. You know what happened yesterday? He asked me to give a talk to all the ministers in the federal cabinet. Before they started their meeting, the Prime Minister requested me 30 minutes to teach them how we live and how we develop the state of Sarawak, particularly in the new economy. The hydrogen economy, which is new to them. The green economy, also new to them. So yesterday I became a teacher to teach the federal cabinet. You know what happened? He used the word in Malay, kuliah. Now he wants me to give again a talk to all the YB, all the MPs and CM on the new economy that Sarawak has adopted. Sekarang kita tidak ikut kita tidak ikut dia.
Alright, so what is your immediate response to the clip? I mean, it has been kind of viral for most Sarawakian, and I think even some of my Semenanjung friends have seen it also.
No, actually, I find it very, very amusing. I mean, the way that he was just laughing at it, laughing at the whole idea of him being a teacher, I thought it was just really amusing to watch. And I felt like his reaction was actually pretty genuine in terms of, I personally don't see him as someone who is showing off pride or things like that, or even arrogance.
No, not at all. In fact, our friend David Tian sent it to us, right? And his comment was, look, he was so pleased because finally the federal government, the prime minister was giving him the muka, the recognition. And so that's the thing we want to talk about. But, this is what Premier Abang said. And he was laughing when he said it, And he said, Prime Minister wanted me to share how we live, how we develop the state of Sarawak, particularly on a new economy. And that's the first thing I was thinking because, historically, West Malaysian, Peninsular Malaysian, they kind of have at least from the elite point of view, they have a superior kind of mindset over Sarawak and Sabahan.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, generally people from Sabah and Sarawak, they will just be coming here to West Malaysia to work, and especially in Kuala Lumpur or where the seat of government was. So, I mean, even now, we still have a lot of people just coming here, like migrating, for lack of better words.
Yeah, I remember more than 10 years ago when I first came here and I met, some bosses and even my father-in-law and things like that. And they all have the same mindset. I guess it's really the territorial kind of thinking that, hey, the land here has better value, you better invest here. There's no point investing in Sabah and Sarawak. So there's this kind of mindset. But of course, I think over the last few years, a few things changed. First, with Barisan Nasional kind of, they are kind of disintegrating, right? And so Sarawak sort of took the initiative to kind of develop their own thing. S4S and GPS kind of disaligned themselves from Barisan Nasional. Then I think another factor was really Indonesia announcing that their new capital will be in Kalimantan. I think that kind of changed the whole game. But I was really, when he said new economy, I think he really felt, and of course he went on to explain, right? And he said hydrogen, economy, green energy. But before we get into all these things, do you think that he is correct when he say that Sarawak is leading in those area of development?
Yes, most definitely. I mean,
Have you seen any hydrogen car here?
No. I mean, would you dare to drive one?
I don't know. I mean, it's like, you know, our premier supposedly use a custom-made hydrogen car from Toyota, and that's his official car. So he is at least I'm going to use it. I'm not afraid of it being exploding. So I mean, a lot of people are kind of skeptical about the viability, the safety, but he seemed confident with. I mean, technology from China, Japan, etc., etc.
I guess people are a bit more accepting towards the whole idea. I mean, even with Elon Musk coming in and making this the regional office, so I felt like maybe there's a shift in terms of the mentality, because we are talking all about electric car, and you even have like a lot of very, very future-looking sort of cars in Klang Valley itself. But then again, you also have this very, very new idea of hydrogen car. I felt like maybe people are just thinking, oh, what are the other options that we have? Especially the government moving towards more into ESG sort of criteria. So you must have certain, I guess, like zero carbon emission sort of concept coming out.
Yeah, I guess the reason they use hydrogen is because they look at it as not fossil-based energy. And in fact, they already have some buses running. I heard from Muka to Oya, so those are the places with a lot of Malana, a lot of Malay, and they want. I think government is kind of a pilot project where it is free. So can you imagine you have a ride from here to Seremban free, or Melaka free all the time? But of course, it's emerging technology, which I don't know. I hope nothing happens. And then of course he went on to talk about Prime Minister used the word to give a kuliah lecture. And say, you know, to all the cabinet ministers, and eventually he said he wants the premier to give a talk to all the member of parliament. So that's quite interesting. Now, before we go into one article we want to talk about, do you feel, I mean, we have kind of alluded here and there that Prime Minister Anwar seems to want to court GPS very, very strongly.
Yes.
I mean, not just help me to survive, but be my co-partner. Did you get that feel?
Yeah, I mean, I do. It's almost like the eyes are really on Sarawak right now. That, I mean, even you have Malaysia Day celebration in Sarawak, leading the whole agenda. I mean, the whole celebration. So, and then this come a day after. So I thought it's really very, very interesting time for Sarawak. And it's also, I guess it's almost like dampening the pro-independence movement.
Yeah, that was what I wanted to say already. You know, what's the impact of that? And also remember, Argon just did a whole tour of the whole highway from Sabah all the way. So, I mean, I think they're going to vote for a new Argon already. But he will choose around the same time as Malaysia Day to visit. I mean, he was there for what, 2-3 weeks?
Yep.
Very, very significant. And I mean, all the reports we heard from people, right, our friends in Sarawak and Cebu, kind of positive.
Yeah.
That they'll be like, oh, you know, we have the supreme leader of the land come and visit. Now we really feel like we're part of the country. You know, do you feel people are saying that kind of thing? Even maybe some of the pro-independence crowd?
Yes. I think it really, really sits very well with Abang Joe's government.
So, I mean, before we look at some other points, just one point, do you think he has done well so far? I mean, the last 4 or 5 years of his reign?
Yes. I think people can be quite forgiving in terms of, obviously his predecessor is someone who is, I mean, I guess he was seen to be a champion. I mean, I'm talking about Adnan. So there's that sort of shift that people are maybe beginning to dissociate them from Taib Mahmud.
Yep.
So, and this really sits very well because obviously, I think they would have studied the election poll results and really find that a lot of Sarawakians who are not staying in Sarawak itself, they came back and voted for some of this urban area, they voted for PH government. So obviously there are certain, I guess they would also want to court the Sarawakians who are more pro-PH. And one way to do that is really to do well with the PH government, I think, especially our Prime Minister.
Yep. So the article that we want to talk about just written yesterday, actually, 21st of September, by Francis Xia. Of course, he's a Sarawakian commentator. And the article is called, I Give You Face, You Give Me Face.
Very Sarawakian way of saying things.
Talking about Abang and PMX, of course. And this is what he said, quote, "One thing is very clear. No matter who leads the Sarawak government, it will always aspire to be part of the federal government." Now, I think when you look at the history of the voting, and regardless of what the pro-independence people are saying, I think this is the reality at the moment. It doesn't mean that those who aspire for independence cannot fight for that, cannot argue for that, cannot persuade people for that. I mean, we have been very clear that everyone should have the right. But at the moment, do you feel this represents the desire of the government of Sarawak and also the people?
Yes, most definitely. I mean, of course, obviously, they are the state government. They are the ones that have the bigger voice. And of course, they can have all the things that they are saying that, look, I represent the majority of Sarawakians. Which is, in a way, I think, true from voting perspective, if you talk about state government perspective. I mean, barring aside that a lot of people couldn't go back during the time to vote for state government, still they are the ones who hold the most votes. So in a way, I think it's safe to say that Sarawakians are generally happy with the performance of Abang government. And even more so now, I mean, because earlier on you were just alluding that there were a lot of positive remarks from our friends in Sarawak, even with the Agong visiting, and even with our Prime Minister really just giving like a lot of face to our Abang.
Yep. And this is what Francis continued to say. He said, Prime Minister and Premier have prioritized political stability because there is a need to emphasize on implementing their plans. And then he continued. He said, 9 months into the Madani government, I think that Anwar and Abang had developed a healthy working relationship based on mutual trust, understanding, and goodwill. I think we sort of agree to that. But one of the most important statements made by Premier was on Malaysia Day itself. I think they were celebrating in Kuching. And he said this, and I quote, "We give you, Anwar, full support and you have a stable federal government until the next election." End of quote. So, do you feel this is a strong endorsement by GPS over the Madani government?
Yes, definitely. I mean, just look at the sort of statement. Why would a premier wanting to reiterate certain statement? I mean, you could have just make your silence be the ultimate voice. But he went on and really just... It's almost like he's doubling down to show that, I'm repentant of what I did earlier on. I mean, when they were very, very quick to just wanting to form government with PN. Now with all this and now seeing all the state election results, I guess they were being very, very tactical and very calculated. So I don't think he did it on a whim. I don't think he just did it like, oh, because it's Malaysia Day and I have to say certain things that is pleasing. I felt like he genuinely thought that...
It's a true endorsement.
Yeah, I think so, because obviously it's not palatable for people to... I guess people don't have the sort of appetite to have another instability in the government, and especially at the federal government level. So you definitely do have to have someone who is like a champion for the people. And there's no better time to do that than now, because with UMNO really just dwindling down in their power, you need someone else to fill in the gap. So
I mean, it's like, I mean, I think we have to kind of give it to Abang that he recognizes the mood and sentiment of the people. That after a few rounds of backdoor government, the people generally are just not in the mood for that. Now, of course, we need to remind our viewers and listeners, what happens at general election. Right after general election, Hishamuddin flew to Kuching, immediately strike a deal to form GPS, PN, UMNO, which will be no different from Sabri's government. But Sahid say no. So, I mean, we have covered that story. And, a lot of people will be like, why GPS so stupid? Why Abang so stupid at that time? But now you think about it, it's like the partnership between Pakatan Harapan government. I mean, now the federal government is not Pakatan Harapan, it's a unity government. But there was no cooperation before. And we have to remember the kind of bitter war, especially DAP with GPS had for so long in Sarawak. So it's really now we reflect back 9 months, 8 months. I think it's understandable why people do not want to work. They always say, right? I mean, it's like, why do you want to work with past? And the saying is, better the devil I know than the devil I don't. So, but when I go back to the clip again and just look at his emotion and the way he said, I really felt like he was rather pleased with this arrangement.
Yes, it's almost like like when it shows the seniority, it shows the sort of recognition that you will want as a politician. I suppose it's like, if you're already there, you're already established, what else do you want aside from more recognition? And this is coming from pretty much the highest authority in the land, and you have a prime minister that is just, I acknowledge the contribution that you did for Sarawak government and Sarawak people, so why not you share it with us? And maybe there's also a genuine intention from our prime minister to having to let's explore this.
I mean, we kind of talk a little bit about, what is the long-term game of prime minister, because he will need support, right? And if UMNO support or, whatever support, even within his PKR, if those cannot be secured strongly, then he will want to kind of invite GPS. And I mean, he has done quite a few things to help them, right? Even with the petroleum royalty, a better deal. I think the sales and service tax refund to them. Previously, there was some federal land, not state land taken for federal development returned to Sarawak. And just DPM give to Sarawak. So I mean, it's like kind of ban back work for Sarawak, for GPS especially.
Yep.
But of course, the other thing is, GPS since Adnan's time have been kind of forging their own path. And that's why the whole new economy, I was just thinking, because, those viewers and listeners, we have some opinion on ESG and green energy. We'll talk about that another time. This is not the episode to do it. But since COVID time, one of the things, remember, we talked about GPS was that they have autonomy even over COVID policies. And they made English official language. And, all kind of things. And one of the things we were just discussing during dinner time was, how the whole renewal of land lease, which was the biggest opposition issue among the urban voters, and Adnan just kind of solved it like that. Flat rate renewal fee. So, for example, if I have a detached house, I just pay 2,000 ringgit, I get another 60 years. It's like, you don't see this kind of thing in West Malaysia. West Malaysia, the premium renewal is going to cost a bomb. So, do you see this is an expression of self-determination from GPS and Sarawak?
Yes, I think it could be something that we do definitely need to remain a bit more open-minded about, because obviously it's something that is very, very new to Malaysia. I mean, we're so used to big government, we're so used to federal government being very big, bulky. And now you have a state government that is showing the example of really just, hey, I have autonomy over this, and if I show good results, don't come and just come into my territory, don't come into my turf. So it's really something, because we have been talking so much about local elections, I guess this would be a form of an example. I mean, of course, this is on a high level, as in the state government, you have really those state government that is governing all these things, but they are really, I think they are doing quite a good job in terms of really just trying to show that decentralization is possible. And that is the message that our Prime Minister is trying to really just bring across the board.
Yeah. And of course, the state election, GPS won so huge. And then the last general elections, the data show a trend towards Pakatan Harapan, but GPS still quite comfortable. So in the end, I guess both sides will be it's a win-win situation for now.
Then again, Sarawak government has always been opportunist.
Yep. But the thing is, their opportunist mindset allowed them to have a more concrete partnership with Pakatan Harapan. And now they'll be maybe this is a better option than PN, than UMNO. I mean, of course, this is 9 months, and whereas Barisan Nasional has been around for 40, 50 years, you can't change the mindset immediately. But this is a good start, don't you think?
Yep.
Now, let's talk a little bit about, okay, what's the thing I want to talk about? Okay, it's like, now we talk about the new economy, right? And I mean, actually, honestly, my first reaction is, because we're so used to, the elite mindset, Sabah, Sarawak, you're beneath us. But then as I reflect on what you said earlier on, indeed, Sarawak government seems to be more into ESG than even here. And they're more into hydrogen and things like that. And they have direct technology import from China and things like that. But I want to kind of focus on the aspect now in terms of the restructuring of economy, because it seems like, now, of course, the economy of Sarawak cannot compare with the Peninsula Malaysia. I mean, in terms of GDP, in terms of the volume, in terms of the technology, not quite comparable. But in terms of their flexibility to change, seems like GPS could do it more easily. And I want your comment on this, because and the reason I see is really because GPS has absolute political control over the state. And then you have less establishment and deep state power. You don't have big civil service. You don't have GLC. You don't have the billionaire tycoon. All these are people with a lot of influence over political and administrative decisions. Royalty, dare I say. So all these things kind of, we talk about what is limiting Anwar Ibrahim, all these things. But in Sarawak, none. So what do you think?
I wouldn't say none per se. I mean, in construction, we do have a joke that, talking about CMS.
Oh, right. but GPS is controlled by them.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's almost like, we always joke around by saying that, it's a chief minister and son's company. So obviously, the whole control goes to the state government. I mean,
maybe
definitely.
that's the acronym, right?
No, obviously not. It's Chaya Mata Sarawak, I think. So, but the thing is, you have... Imagine if you have all the infrastructure that is under the direct control of the government. I mean, it's like Singapore. You have the infrastructure, the telecommunication that is being controlled by the government. What can the people do? I mean, in the same way, they do have absolute power over this whole thing. But I think that has always been the sort of deal that there has been struck, especially with Tun Mahathir, that you don't come and disturb our turf, and we don't do that to the federal government, and we have peaceful life coexisting together. But the thing is, that sort of, I wouldn't say it's a break away from like big government. It's a form of big government also in Sarawak. Yes, we may not have those deep states, we may not have all those administrative states as complicated as the form that is in West Malaysia, but we do have a lot of these. I mean, everyone having to report to CMS. Everyone having to report to... So in a way, it's a form of... Maybe it's not the right term to call them GLC, but it's definitely
it's very
state-owned company.
GLC. And actually now you mentioned, we can even argue that the big government concept in Sarawak is even bigger because it's really type Mahmud and family.
Yeah, the thing that came into my mind would definitely be a bit like the construction companies in China that are being controlled directly by CCP.
Yep.
So you have exactly the same sort of scenario in Sarawak. I would argue that the control might be even more than what you have here. I mean, the Prime Minister over GLC, if we were doing that sort of comparative studies. But the thing is, in Sarawak, just because they have enjoyed that sort of perks, is it something that is desirable? I don't think so, but they do definitely enjoy that sort of absolute power. They are definitely wanting to be the pioneer for the people. Obviously, they need to keep their pool of voters happy, and so that they can be really literally like the kingmaker.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite interesting that, even though, we talk about GPS or at Barisan Nasional Sarawak, they will help people to understand the progression. It's like the past 30, 40 years, they never quite prioritize infrastructure development in Sarawak. But now it seems like they want to do a lot of infrastructure.
Isn't it the same with China when they are starting to bloom? You definitely have to appease the middle class middle working class.
So is it? So you feel Sarawak is influenced by the China model?
I think to a certain degree, yes. I mean, they definitely do like that sort of absolute control. And you see it in, I mean, sad to say, you see it in really in communist country whereby they have dictators, they have tyrant. I mean, it's good that now they have the heart for the people, but what's the path ahead for Sarawak?
Yeah, and of course, when you reward people with infrastructure, some people kind of like it, and they will support you for it. But of course, talking about CMS, I mean, in West Malaysia, I mean, you're in the construction field. Your bosses, do they talk about it? I mean, is this like a very common knowledge even to Peninsula people?
I guess it's because previously the former company that I worked with, I mean, it's famous company. I mean, obviously they have certain ties with CMS.
Right.
So that's
they
how
know.
that's how I kind of knew about the whole relationship. And the company will rather be privatized than really, I mean, privatized from the Bursa Malaysia, but rather than really just having been owned by a large stake being held by Sarawak government, I think. So that's why they decided, because initially they wanted to do a bit more projects in Sarawak, but obviously you need to have certain ties. The sort of relationship, the sort of favor that you need will be very, very different from West Malaysia. So I guess it's more like a sort of business relationship. Do you think it's worthwhile to court them or not?
Yeah. Now, one of the things we talk about, of course, the state government really have absolute power because of their dominance in the state assembly. But I will argue they are being balanced by the fact the federal government, now friendly but quite different, So it's not as if it is a Barisan Nasional or Neo Barisan Nasional. I mean, unless you can call Perikatan Neo Barisan Nasional, but I don't think so. It's quite a different setup, right? So in Malaysia, the federal dominance is really huge. So the only thing the state can really leverage is land and natural resources. Of course, those are huge, but there are so many other things, education, health, public policy, defense, all kind of things just coming and can constrain you. So in a way, it seems like, for now, win-win situation. But let's talk about Abang again. And, no matter what is being said, he used to be part of Taib Mahmud's cabinet and things like that. Do you feel like he is trying to maybe create his own legacy and separate himself from that era?
That would seem to be the way. I mean, on surface, it definitely does look like it. And you also have, like, earlier on we were seeing certain clips, like Taib Mahmud is really just, the health is probably deteriorating. So maybe it's a good time to chart a name for himself. I'm not sure. What do you think?
I think so. And just talk about CMS. There's a lot of rumbling that the monopoly of cement will finally be over.
Wow.
Rumbling. And I guess they're just waiting for the old man to be gone. And
that would be very, very interesting.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, if you continue this kind of monopoly protectionism, of course, there are many, many examples. These are the negative examples. Certain products cannot come in. We even talk about bakwa cannot come in, fresh milk cannot come in. Some of the things that we consume. I know it's very, very small things, and maybe some people don't even consume it. But you can just see that whenever somebody has an interest in Sarawak, they will try to hinder competition. That's always their style.
Then again, I think our Prime Minister is also very, very clever because the cabinet introduced the transfer pricing guidelines that is really, really just being strengthened. And one way to prevent all this sort of like you trying to evade tax is really, I guess maybe that's why the rumbling, the sort of things that we are beginning to see, because there's obviously the clamping down from federal government, but also giving you sufficient freedom to maneuver around.
Yeah, it's like if you want to like politically, Prime Minister is trying to restrict, some of the rival UMNO and things like that. So how do you do that? You empower GPS. But if GPS gets too powerful, it needs to find ways to clamp it down. So it's like a juggling game, right? When you don't have... And I mean, we mentioned a few times already that this is preferred to strongman dominance, right? Old man, strongman dominance. Now, let's look at the outlook, okay? So we talk about this federal and state dynamic. And now, this model obviously is unique because of MA63 and things like that. Do you think this kind of model can be duplicated by other states?
I'm not too sure. As in, aside from Johor, that you have people saying that there's Bangsa Johor, I don't really hear it so much for other places.
I mean, as in they want their separate identity and separate...
Maybe Kelantan has a little bit of that, but generally, most of the West Malaysian state, I think they are very happy with just, let's stick together. A bit more communal in a sense, like a much bigger community for the greater good, for the whole of Malaysia, because I think that's just the sort of sentiment I feel, but I'm not too sure because I can't speak definitely for West Malaysia.
Now, with Sabah, Sarawak, Terengganu, and maybe Kelantan, do you think the dispute is because of petroleum?
Yep.
Because, so one way to resolve it would be just come and agree a new, fairer system of royalty sharing.
Yeah, I mean, why not? But then again, would the Prime Minister want to do that?
I mean, if he wants to decentralize, for now, it is good for him, but in future, we don't know. Because now he needs to kind of reduce federal power. But the fact is our whole petroleum industry is nationalized. And that's like the number one income generation for our country. So it's not easy for him, definitely. But is that the way forward, you think? I mean, should our petroleum... I know we are, both of us are not really in petroleum industry and things like that. But just going forward, because that's a whole argument... That's one of the pillar for independence, right? That we have our own petroleum, but a lot of people don't realize that the government doesn't own the thing. Someone will develop, someone will extract it, and then you get income tax, you get whatever tax. Someone needs to come and extract the oil. You're not going to do it yourself.
Yeah, it's very costly.
Yeah, I mean, you can do it yourself, but that's the most inefficient government. But that's a whole basis for the pro-independence, right? That we are able to self-finance. But if there is a fairer way already that the state government, the petroleum-rich state government, you have to kind of adjust some of the law which kind of make it not so fair, in terms of the coastline. I think there's a few law over the years. So if all those are reversed, do you see that maybe... the pro-independence, at least for now, the voice will diminish even further?
Yeah. I mean, even just talking about like certain support for maybe even like in the northern states of Malaysia, and you have the certain support towards Perikatan Nasional, it might also cause a huge shift as well, because if, let's say, there's decentralization and there's a lot of talks, how can the Prime Minister act fairly in the interest of all Malaysians? So that is one way of really showing that he has a greater vision for Malaysia.
Yeah, and Transport Minister just went to Terengganu, right, and talked to the Menteri Besar there. And so it's like the federal government cannot behave in a way that kind of dish out punitive punishment against the states that are not in line with federal support. So, but this is very interesting because really I think the decentralization is here to stay.
No, and you also mentioned, I mean, during dinner time, you mentioned like Abraham Lincoln's whole cabinet, half of them constitute from Democrats. I mean, that's just...
Yeah, because they had a very, very bitter... So some from Democrat and some from his primary rival. So okay, now Republicans are doing their primary, right? Can you imagine whoever become the president? Actually, it happened before, gets one of them, one or two to be cabinet member. So that's kind of unique. I mean, you have to be such a secure leader that you're not ruling through dominance only. Okay, so I think we want to finish off by what's your view on all these federal state dynamic. Maybe I should put it in a different way. What's the ideal for you? What kind of, now of course it can be something that maybe not achieved yet, but assuming, again, maybe I'm presuming that for now you are still in favor of the Federation of Malaysia.
Yes.
Okay, so we get that point out already. So assuming you agree with that, what's your ideal federal state relationship? I mean, you look at the constitution, the division of power. Do you think that's fair? Do you think that's, is that desirable?
No. I mean, it's a long list for federal government. I mean,
so what should come to the state? In your view,
education.
Education, okay.
Health.
Mm-hmm.
I think health system has proven to be crappy, especially during COVID
You mean
time.
federalization of health?
Yes, I'm more in support of really just having a more competitive sort of healthcare system, whereby everyone. I mean, obviously you have to work out certain form of incentive to develop healthcare system within healthcare infrastructure from in different states, because you also have like certain districts that are really just serving like a lot of smaller towns. So I don't think that's really desirable per se, because obviously you want to have like the best help that is given to everyone. I mean, all Malaysians, because we all pay tax, so we should be given the same sort of treatment. So there must be a way to sort of decentralize it a bit more, so that there's incentive to really just cause certain healthcare system to be blossoming. So I think these two are the two main industries main sectors that come into my mind.
Yeah, and when you kind of, one of the term they use when you reduce the power, they call it devaluation. As in, we hear devaluation of currency, but that they also use this, So if you devaluate federal power, then the state also need to devaluate some of their power. So that means we need local election to come in. But all this, I think, is really long term, because if we want to introduce state local elections, and I think you need a few rounds before people are truly confident and comfortable.
No, we can start with the federal territories first.
Yeah, why not, right? We don't have a state and things like that. But I mean, just let everyone do it, and maybe you kind of, I don't know, whatever Tom, Dick, and Harry, whatever dog and cat that you put in. If you screw up, then people learn. I mean, that's how you learn good and bad representation, right? Then if federal devalue their power, then state should also devalue some of the power to local.
Most definitely. I mean, you don't want to have another mini tyrant that is running their own government.
The mini Napoleon, as it's been said. And then, of course, the local council need to give away some power, and some of the power needs to go to communities and families. So that's ideal, right? But we're looking at, I don't know how many years. And in fact, I was just reading Wen Qinghua has an article, and he was just talking about one of the things that can be done. Of course, we need to, the parties need to come and negotiate withdrawing of the boundary, because the election boundary now is very, very skewed towards rural. And it's a bit like Undi 18 like that. Nobody knows when it's going to favor you. So now, you talk about PN now, rural is helping them, but in the blink of an eye, it could shift. So that's why it needs a lot of negotiation. But he was saying that at the earliest, it will have to be 2026.
Very, very interesting timeline.
Yeah, so 2020 in the earliest, he said, because of negotiation and things like that. So a lot of things can happen. So what do you feel about the next? I know it's a bit, we try not to do forecasts and things like that, but maybe I should
Peer into the future.
Yeah, maybe I should reframe my question. Do you feel like Madani is stable for the next 4 years?
It looks like it. I mean, it does have a positive air to the whole thing. I mean, especially with GPS, the Premier showing support. So I think it's really like what the author was saying in the article, that our Prime Minister could sleep soundly at night.
And remember, I think yesterday or the day before, Johor Sultan said he was prepared to do his duty. That means he is prepared to be the next Agong. Because a lot of the rumors say that he was supposed to be the last Agong. but he didn't want to have anything to do with Mahathir. So he kind of said no. And I think when he said that, in a way, he is also hinting that there's not going to be any change of federal government under me. I felt like he's saying that. And he kind of, he was not supposed to say that, but I mean, I think through his Raja Muda, Tengku Mahkota, that kind of say, PN will be bad for economy. I'm talking about 8-9 months ago. So, I mean, if you have GPS supporting, you have a potential new Algon supporting, then it's not so easy to change government, at least until the next general election.
Yes.
Then everything is on the table. Okay, so I think that's all the time we have for today. And, of course, from this Abang Joe's viral video, he talked about alternative energy, he talked about green economy, and all these things, which I think we want to spend another episode to talk about it, because we actually have a lot of opinion on green energy, right?
Yes.
Okay, so until next time, bye-bye for now.
Bye-bye.